A Harvard-trained neurosurgeon's brain was completely shut down, and what he experienced goes against all scientific knowledge. Dr. Eben Alexander was a neurosurgeon, a man of science, reason and logic, and for years he dismissed near-death experiences, NDEs, as just the brain misfiring before death. But in 2008, everything changed. Dr. Eben Alexander experienced a rare and deadly bacterial meningitis. Within hours, his brain was completely shut down. He went into a deep coma, and the part of his brain called the neocortex, which is the part that creates thought, emotion, consciousness, ceased functioning. There were actual EEGs done on his brain to prove this. That part of the brain was completely shut off. And according to current medical understanding, what he should have been experiencing during that time is complete and utter nothing. The part of the brain that creates those things was shut off, so he should have been experiencing nothing. But what he experienced blow your fucking mind. Before we go on, I just want to make one thing clear. I'm not sure if this is real or not, but it's bloody interesting nevertheless. And what happens after we die stories like this are truly fascinating. So during this time, while Dr. Eben Alexander was lying in a hospital bed with his brain doing absolutely no activity, he says he was experiencing somewhere else, some other realm, as he describes it. He found himself in a place of joy and peace and rich, radiant colors. And in his book, The Proof of Heaven, he calls this place the Gateway Realm. He says he was flying or like soaring over lush, rich countryside with waterfalls and beautiful colors and flowers, the purest water. And he said the air shimmered with like divine light. He said he encountered a beautiful woman. And at the time, he didn't recognize her, or she was unfamiliar, completely unfamiliar, but a beautiful woman. She had no wings, but she was also appeared to be flying or soaring with him. And he said that she exuded peace and love and ancient wisdom. And he said, she said to him, "You are loved, you are cherished, you have nothing to fear, and you can do no wrong." And he also said that it wasn't spoken through words or voice, it was told to him telepathically. And then he said, from this realm, he then entered into another realm that he called the core. And this realm felt even deeper than the other one. He said this realm felt like the heart of the divine, the infinite, the unchanging, the eternal. He said there was no up, no down, no time, no space, only infinite, boundless love. And that's what he was experiencing. He then encountered a bright orb of light, and it was playing the most beautiful music he had ever heard. Nothing on earth could produce music this divine. He said he couldn't find the words to describe the music because it was just so profound and different. The main thing he said about the music was it brought him to even deeper, profound love and peace. And so even though he didn't know what the hell was going on, it didn't feel scary because it was so peaceful and full of love. Like it sounds to me, it could be like too trippy. For he says it never felt like that. It was just constantly calm and peaceful and full of love. And he just was full of those feelings and didn't have time to be scared. And then he says he encountered the Creator, which he called the infinite, the unbound, the all. But it wasn't a figure, it was like a force. But even though that sounds a little bit not so personal, he said he felt like it knew him and it loved him and it knew everything about him, and it was personal. It was just an incredible feeling of being loved and knowing. It was a knowing. He got the overwhelming sense of home, being home. And that's actually a common thing that many near-death experiences experience, is that feeling of home, of being home, coming home. And he said the Creator said to him, "You are part of the One. You always have been and you always will be." And despite him being in bliss, he was told that he cannot stay here, it's not his time, and he must go back. He still has purpose to fulfill. And then he said he returned to his hospital bed by passing through the realms, and that woman that he encountered on his way up helped him back down again as well by his side as he was flying, and she escorted him back to his bed. And just before she left, she gave him one final look, and then darkness, and then he woke up in his bed in the hospital ward. And after 7 days in a coma with essentially no brain activity, he just woke up. And the doctors were astounded. And then he made a full recovery, which is basically just miraculous. And not only did he survive, but he was able to maintain and retain everything that happened to him while he was in that coma. And while he was recovering, he knew he was a changed man. And that hard science, logic, and reason was basically out the door. It was whished away, and he was completely refocused and understand his new self and his new purpose, why he was brought back here. So the thing that he was thinking about and trying to work out was, how the hell did he experience this wonderful, magical, colourful world full of love, while essentially his brain was shut down, the part of the brain that is creative, that does make reason, that does make logic, that does understand, that does make consciousness awake, awareness in this world. How could he have had this experience when that part of the brain, the neocortex, was shut down? He said it felt more real in his experience while he was in the coma than it does now here on Earth. And he just could not explain that. So the only thing he could come up with was that consciousness exists outside of the brain. It's not part of the brain doesn't create it like the neurosurgeon he was before. Cambridge trained surgeon with the scientific understanding of how the neocortex creates consciousness. Out the door. Consciousness now exists outside of the brain. That was his thinking. It had to be. It had to be. Now, back to the lady and his experience that escorted him through the different realms and up to the source, and then back down into his body. Later on, while he was recovering, months later, while he was still trying to work it all out and understand things, he got a letter in the mail. Now, Dr. Eben Alexander was adopted, and this letter that he got was from his birth family that he's never had contact with ever and never met at all. So it was from his birth mother and birth family. Now, within the letter, there were some pictures, and one of the pictures was of a woman who was the same woman in his near-death experience. That same woman who escorted him through the realms and back into his body was this woman in this photograph that he got in the mail while he was recovering in the hospital. It happened to be one of his birth sisters who had already died. How about that? He didn't know he had sisters, and he definitely didn't know he had a sister who died. And his other siblings were the ones who sent the letter. And here is the picture of his sister who was named Betsy, and she's the one who died. And that was the woman who was in his near-death experience. It was his sister, Betsy. So this picture just hit him like a wave, he said. It just solidified everything that he experienced. And it was the final bit to the puzzle in his head to make it real. So consciousness is outside the brain. And for him, that was the clincher. And he clearly remembers everything that happened to him in his experience. And the woman was exactly the same as the photograph, Betsy. The same eyes, the same hair, the same smile, the same energy that you feel when you see somebody's character. It was the same person. There was no doubt. No doubt. He remembered it clearly. So now, even though this near-death experience seems to signify consciousness outside of the brain, and there is something after death. And that was his sister who helped him through the afterlife and through the realms and back into his body and all that, solidifying to him that it is real. That was a proper, real experience he had, and not just some dream or something, because his brain was shut down. So that was consciousness. That was him in consciousness in the afterlife for a wee while. Nevertheless, I want to explore what the critics said, because all this happened many years ago. So there's been plenty of time for professional critics to look at this case and give their view on it. So some neurologists claim that his brain may not have been as inactive as he claims in his book. They claim that residual brain function could be happening, which could produce hallucinations or dream-like state. And also the timeline of the experience. They suggest that perhaps he could have experienced this just before he woke up from his coma, when there was brain function happening. All of that experience could have happened within just a few minutes, because time is a crazy thing. It's like an hour can fit into a minute and a minute can fit into an hour, depending on how you look at it. Time is one of those motherfuckers that can produce paradoxical conundrums, can't it? Anyway, so they suggest that his whole experience could have fitted into a small amount of time when his brain was functioning, just before he woke from his coma. So it's really hard to explain when exactly he was experiencing the experience he had. It might not have been within the time period of when his brain was not functioning. It could have happened just before he went into the coma or just after. That is up for debate, but some neurologists have made critical claims saying that is possible. So the main criticism about the whole thing from neuroscientists and other professional critics is that there's a lot of unknowns in the whole case, and it could have happened within brain function somewhere along the line. There's just too many unknowns for them to accept that as a reality. Of course, Dr. Eben Alexander has read and heard his critics and what they've had to say, and has always rebutted. He says that EEGs prove that his brain was not functioning during that coma, and it is what it is, and the critics are just finding ways to discredit it, but it is what it is. And they're trying to save his brain function in a non-functioning brain. He says that the neocortex shutdown proven by the EEGs is the part of the brain which produces the hallucinations and the visions and the dreamlike states that they say he had through brain function, but he had no brain function. So it is what it is. They're claiming that there might be some residual brain function in time before or after, but it doesn't appear like that. It's like they're trying to find ways to discredit his way it is. So he was pretty much clinically dead for a short period, and his experience pretty much goes against science. So of course he's going to get a lot of criticism, he explains. Scientific scientists find it very difficult to accept things that are outside of their paradigm. And he says he's trying to break out of that norm, out of that old thinking, that hard thinking, and accept that his experience is an indication that there's more to it than that. And he sticks to his claim, and he's written a book about it, and it is what it is, he says. So as it is, Dr. Eben Alexander believes that consciousness does exist outside of our brains, and that death is merely the beginning of another phase of life for all of us. What are your thoughts on near-death experiences? Do you believe in an afterlife?